Can hearing aids help with ringing in the ears? I'm going to tell you. There are different types of ringing in the ears, and the majority of them are of one type. And this particular type of tinnitus is related to hearing loss. So you have these hair cells in your inner ear that as we get older, they tend to deteriorate due to the activity throughout your life in your auditory system, just the kind of noise exposure that you've had. Those hair cells do start to lose their ability to be stimulated as easily. What happens is when you don't treat your hearing loss or are not aware of your hearing loss, what happens is those pathways to the brain, they're not sending as much information to the brain as they used to. When you look at brain scans of a person who's experiencing an auditory signal, you see that auditory part of the brain active, right? In contrast, when you're looking at a brain scan of a person who is experiencing tinnitus, we see multiple parts of the brain are activated at that time. What we know is that our multiple parts of our brain are involved in creating this substitute signal for information that used to be coming into the brain, and the brain has created a program to replace it. So what studies show is that when we appropriately treat our hearing loss with hearing aids and begin sending signals through those pathways to the brain where information previously was not coming to the brain, what we see is a decrease in the ringing. So the programming that was created as a substitute for information that used to come in now no longer serves a purpose. Hey guys, if you like this video, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel. I want to demonstrate how much I believe in this. So I have hearing loss in one ear. It's in my right ear. I've had it my whole life. I've always struggled to hear out of this ear. And I did not treat my hearing loss or even know that that was an option until I was in college. But even then, I hadn't taken the step to do something about it because I had gotten used to the scoliosis in my back from just leaning like this my whole life and talking to people like that. So I became a hearing care provider, and I would do hearing tests. And we have a booth right next to my station, right? And whenever I would have to send a pure tone at 3,000 hertz, this particular area of the frequency spectrum, whenever I would send that signal to the person in the booth, if their hearing loss was bad enough and I had to play the tone really loud, it would stimulate my ringing in my right ear because I always had tinnitus in this ear. So I had the hearing loss and the ringing in the same ear, not the other ear, both in this ear. So whenever I would play that tone, that 3,000 hertz tone loud enough, it would stimulate my ringing. And it was loud, and I couldn't focus on the hearing test I was doing. It became distracting enough and frustrating enough. You know, it just would really throw me off, and it was horrible. And I had heard that tinnitus was related to hearing loss, and this was early on in all of that research. And so I decided to try wearing a hearing aid and treating my hearing loss and see if that would help. And wouldn't you know, my ringing went away. I didn't really pay attention to it. It just kind of gradually went away. I just noticed that I didn't have it anymore. And I wore my hearing aid every day. It became part of my body. But I remember when it was maybe I had started treating my hearing loss maybe 3 months prior to this incident. And I had been too lazy to get out of the bed and charge my hearing aid. So I just took my hearing aid off and threw it on the floor. So in the morning, my hearing aid started to die at work around 9 a.m. So I put my hearing aid on the charger. At 11:30, I was on the phone. I'll never forget it. I was at the front desk and I was on the phone and my ringing came back. And I was like, not again, because it had been several months. And I was like, oh my God, I freaked out. And so I put my hearing aid back on, and I did have a couple episodes of the ringing for the rest of the day, but it did subside. It did. And it wasn't until, and I wore my hearing aid religiously after that, because I was like, I'm never going back to the ringing. So I wake up in the morning, I put my hearing aid on, and it stays on until I go to bed. And I haven't had any ringing since. Now, that was years ago. I want to mention that here we are years later, and now I can spend the day on the lake with my kids or at the pool or whatever, or at the beach, and I don't wear my hearing aid that day because I've learned my lesson a few times with that. So I will go without my hearing aid for the whole day, and the ringing does not come back now. I really don't recall having an episode since that day that my hearing aid was not charged years ago. So I don't know if it gradually comes back if you stop wearing hearing aids. These are all other, things that to test and look into, and what actually happens to that program in the brain that we had created for the ringing. Can we break down that program and make it go away? I don't know. But I do know that by wearing my hearing aid and keeping it on every day, I do not have that frustrating, debilitating, awful ringing in my ears anymore. I just want to make a quick note about the differences between the different types of tinnitus. So while the majority of tinnitus is the kind that is, created from programming in the brain that we do treat with hearing care to calm that programming, there are other types of tinnitus. They are the minority, but these are going to be the cases. They operate very differently. You'll see where the ringing, you experience relief from maybe moving into a different position, or they're related to balance. You'll experience balance issues with the ringing. And this is due to the fact that the inner ear, where those hair cells are that are actually being stimulated from the pressure in the cochlea and sending those actual signals in your auditory system, that brain fluid is flowing through your inner ear and your vestibular system, so that both systems can be impacted by that pressure and fluctuation in that pressure. And so I want to just make it clear that those are they're different situations, and that's not related to hearing care. So I'm speaking specifically for the majority of tinnitus, where we can treat it with hearing care. Now, it's always a good idea to have a hearing test. It's always a good idea to stay on top of your hearing loss and treat your hearing loss. But that may not be the case. It may be that there is something else going on, and you won't know until you go and have a hearing test and move past that. A lot of times ENTs will refer their patients over to us to have a hearing test and make sure that it's not something that we can handle with hearing care. And you kind of rule it out. So just know that the majority of cases are going to be the kind that we're talking about, where you notice the ringing a little more in the evenings, or when it's quiet, or it's just a constant sound all the time, and or a certain sound will trigger it, like mine. So the nature of the ringing kind of does have indications to which kind it is. But again, having a hearing test and finding out if you have hearing loss and dealing with that is a great way to start. Don't go to the pharmacy and buy that random vitamin that you read online was going to help you, or, whatever crazy stuff they have out there. But right now, the tried and true best method for treating ringing in the ears is to treat your hearing loss. Just wearing the amplification, getting the signals to the brain in itself can solve the problem. Most of the time, it does. And I'm living proof of that. So it looks like my patient just opened her garage, so I think she's ready for her appointment. So I'm going to go and do that. If you like this video and you're interested in other hearing-related topics, go ahead and subscribe to my channel, and feel free to put something in the comments if you'd like for me to answer any questions, like the video, all that stuff, and I'll keep them coming. All right, guys, going back to this hearing test. Have a great day, and thanks for watching.